bit nervous about the topic we are discussing.
Yeah. It's a controversial one today.
It is. And it's like hard to approach because there are so many angles. And we obviously have our views on it.
Of course, yeah.
But then we have to be considerate of others. And So do you want to present a topic?
I think you should present the topic because I think it's a topic that, first of all, you have the paper in front of you. Which means that you know exactly what we said we'd call it. And I might just paraphrase.
Yeah.
And second, because like this was, I think, your idea to have this topic and bring it onto the platform. And I think that it was a great idea. And I was like, okay. And we fast tracked it and we were like, okay, let's do it as soon as possible. Because we know the implications of it more so now than ever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's very timely.
It is very, very timely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So today we're going to talk about politics.
Yeah.
Especially on LinkedIn. And not just politics, but like the unspeakables, like things we are not really supposed to talk about on LinkedIn. So I'll just go through the 3 big ones quickly.
Yes.
So politics, sexual implicit content, and swear words.
Yeah.
And this is like the big no-no. You're not supposed to talk about it at the dinner table, corporate, and LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
But we do want to talk about everything. And we are especially inclined to talk about politics right now.
Especially on the LinkedIn platform.
Yes.
I think I've said before, this platform is an adult platform. There will not be any young people on here. There will be less so impressionable people. Mm-hmm. So why do we not talk about politics?
Yeah.
Like, why is that an off limits? And I'm going to go ahead and say the reason it's off limits is because a lot of people that we work with and we all have difference of opinions. And I think if someone you work with or someone who's a lot more senior than you or depending on where you fall, they are more likely to judge you based off of your political beliefs. Yeah. And a lot of the time people want to keep politics out of the workplace. But as someone who sits here, as you know, as a Black person, as a Arab person, as a Muslim person, I can't keep politics out of my life.
No, exactly.
Like, I can't, that's just not possible. Like every single thing that people say or do affects me or one of my groups that I come from. So I choose to stand in front and be like, this is why we need diversity. This is why we need equity and we need inclusion.
Yeah. And we need to talk about it.
And we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I'm pro-politics, and I'm pro-politics for one particular reason, and that is to protect myself. To explain how to protect myself, what I mean by that, by saying where I stand, it allows people who do not see me as how I like to think of it, do not see me as, in a certain type of humanity. They can just kindly just be like, okay, well, I do not want to work with that person, or they don't stand for what I stand for, and it allows me to weed out that sort of
That's
shit.
the thing. Yeah.
So if someone comes and sees, hey, Aziz has made a post about Nazis, which I have, and I just told you about it. This is why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And for some reason they have, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, white supremacist beliefs, which are
or denial, or like not understanding it.
Whatever. Yeah. Great, don't hire me.
Yeah,
great.
Exactly.
I do not want to be anywhere fucking near you.
Exactly, and I would like that to be the opposite as well. Like if someone has those beliefs, I bloody talk about it, right? So that I can avoid you and not be hired by you, and would never go to an interview where you would be the hiring manager or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that takes that away from me, who wouldn't want to be associated with that, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's also interesting. I've noticed that those who talk about politics are usually younger, the younger generations who are woke.
Oh, are we going into the word
right?
woke? Yeah, which has been co-opted because where it comes from to where woke is now.
Yeah,
I don't think people actually know the meaning of it.
I will tell you because I Googled it.
I know you Googled it. And I'm so happy that we are actually going to give people the definition of woke.
Yeah.
I would love to go into the etymology of it too, but it comes from the Black community mainly.
Yes.
So let's get that out there first of all. So it is a word now that's been co-opted by people who do not come from this community. And I won't even go into, there's other terms that they are taking, but I think woke is the one that I'm the most disappointed with how it's used.
But and it's not by the people who originally coined it, right?
No.
Like it's being like trashed by other people who don't know what it actually means. Well, actually they do, but they see that as a bad thing. And I will which is mad. So definition of woke, politically and socially aware. And from the Cambridge Dictionary, aware, especially of social problems such as racism and inequality. So woke means politically and socially aware, and it's used as like a trash word.
Slur. I would like to say, I am proudly woke.
Same. Like put it on a t-shirt.
Yes.
Like I will wear
Woke.
it.
I am so proud to wear it. Yeah. So
it's a great compliment for me.
And I'm Black. Yeah. It's you know, it's, I mean, even when we used it within our community, sometimes it was a bit like, oh, you're a bit woke. But it's not, it was never meant to be what it is now.
What it's become.
So I will still say I'm proudly woke, and I do not see that as slur. I do not see being called woke a slur. I do not see being called a snowflake a slur.
No. Oh, I have that on here.
You've got snowflake too.
I got snowflake.
So yeah, you can call me all the names.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. In fact, I love it because you just showed me your true colors. When you
just showed me your true colors. Exactly. And those are all things that are all just connected to empathy and caring about other people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sad you don't.
Yeah.
Like that. And also it's like you coming out saying these things, like for the people who use it as a slur, it's just so telling how little you value like other people's feelings and like what they stand for and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just can't believe how it's become what it is now. So I'm glad that we're reclaiming this. I mean, many people have before, but we are also doing it.
I'd also like to say snowflakes are really,
I love
they're
snowflakes.
delicate, but they're beautiful.
And they're unique.
They're unique. Each one's unique. Like, what? You think you're insulting me?
Exactly. And when I was little, being a snowflake was like the highest compliment.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it was being unique.
Exactly. Like imagine, you know what? It's like if I was a child and you asked me if I wanted to be unique and, you know, delicate, I'd say, yeah, that sounds like a fairy princess.
Yes, exactly.
I want to be a snowflake when I grow up.
I remember the first time I heard it was like a bad thing and they were like they melt in your hand. And I was, I couldn't quite believe it. I was like, also you can like push them all together and make really hard snowballs.
Yeah.
And like throw them in your head.
Yeah. And that's why I think as far as snowflakes stand together, we are a snowball.
We are a snowball.
A snowball. And as a snowball, that's how we change society.
A snowboulder.
Oh yeah, a snowboulder even.
Snowboulder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how we end up changing society, by being woke, by being snowflakes.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say this as well, because I work in a creative industry. The work suffers when it's not woke.
Yes.
The work suffers when there are no snowflakes. Every single snowflake that has said, oh, I don't think we should put this ad out because it seems a bit insensitive to these groups. And then someone's gone and blown them off. And done it anyway. That's why your work is suffering, because maybe you're not woke enough. Maybe you're not snowflakey enough.
Exactly. It's
Get on the winning
so
team.
True. Like the amount of times like you see an ad or a campaign or something, it's like, oh my God, why didn't they talk to people? Like, why didn't they ask someone like who would know if that's okay or not? Like, it gobsmacks me how little people actually look into.
So what is the definition of snowflake then?
No, sorry, that I did not write down. I wrote down these two snowflakes are about to get political.
Oh, right. Well, we know that. I think everyone knows the definition of snowflake. I just want you to see if there's another definition of it. But a snowflake is a snowflake, right?
Yeah.
It's a frozen piece of small ice that melts in your hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Or melts when it hits you. Yeah. So we know what a snowflake is.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need to cover that. But yeah, I was just wondering if there was another definition.
Probably on Urban Dictionary, you know.
Maybe.
But,
Urban Dictionary is not a real dictionary.
Thank you for saying that. That's why I put down Cambridge Dictionary for the woke
source.
source. because the Urban Dictionary I looked, and they were the ones that the slur that we have just like disowned because we don't stand for them.
I think I'd actually go as far as, and do you know which, I think out of all the words, the one that makes me the saddest is Karen. I'm going to say why. Because there are some amazing people named Karen out there who are now living with the backlash of the word. Yeah. But I have been seeing over the last couple of weeks a lot of, I'm just going to call it out there, a lot of white women coming and being like, oh, well, I hate the word Karen. Yet again, not knowing where it's come from. Yeah. And it came from a time where specifically white women were reporting black people for doing things, calling the police on them. Yeah. And that's where Karen came from. And now, yes, it's being used loosely and just slung at everyone. Yeah. And of course, it is the name of a person, which makes it hard to separate from actual people called Karen. But there are not just Karens, there are other words for other people that are, like gammon, for example. Yeah. Like there are people and I personally don't go around using these words.
No,
myself.
Me neither.
I really don't.
I only use like woke and snowflake on myself.
Exactly.
I don't really use it towards other people.
Exactly.
I love the Karens though, who online go and be like, yes, it's my name, but I'm like owning it, or like either like being the opposite or like falling into it, being like, yes, I'm a Karen.
And I think the most beautiful Karen thing that was ever was when Greg Wallace said something about women of a certain age. And I will just say those women all banded together, and that was Karening, but that's a positive Karening. Yes. You see how that's how you use your Karen to,
do
like
good.
I said, being a snowflake, but instead of a snowflake, now you're a snowboulder. Yeah. Like things don't have to be a slur. You can take them and reclaim them. Exactly. And as a black person sitting here telling you about reclaiming words, we reclaim quite a lot of words. Yeah. And when you reclaim a word, it's so that you and people of that community can say it. Yeah. So, exactly. Exactly. There are a couple of words that people are like, no, we only say this, whether they're from the LGBTQ community. I personally say the word bitch. I sing it around it. But I'm a woman.
Yeah, exactly. Especially about myself, actually.
I say it about myself all the time. If you're not, if you don't identify as a woman, and if you're not on the spectrum of considering yourself, I really don't think it's a word that you should be saying.
Yeah, fair enough.
I just don't. But I'll say the word bitch. But I've always felt bitch is reclaimed. I'll say it as bitch. Like girl. Yeah. Like, you see what I mean? Yeah. So I think we've gotten to a place now where yes, people are quite sensitive about these words, but rightly so.
Yeah. But rightly so, exactly. And it's very interesting because you know how you can only punch upwards, right? Yeah. And I am always allowed to make fun of other Swedes. Like that's something I will always stand for, right?
Yeah, no.
Or like, or Swedes in London. Like I will always be able, like I can take the piss out of us,
I always say as like, I'd make a great comedian. Yeah. The amount of racial groups I touch. Like, I'm like, I would love to be a comedian because I first of all, I wouldn't shit on my own people because I don't enjoy the comedians who are like talking about their parents and like, I don't like that. Yeah. But there are a lot of jokes that I can make and just, they wouldn't,
it's like you have all the infinity stones.
I have exactly. No, I don't have all of them.
Not all of them.
I have nearly all of them.
Yeah, you have a lot of the infinity stones.
I know, exactly. I have quite a few infinity stones, but not all of them yet.
Basically Thanos.
Yeah, basically. So I'm like, if someone wants to do Oppression Olympics, I'm like, bring it on.
Yeah. So let's bring this back then to like LinkedIn and like the things that we feel like comfortable talking about and stuff. So how do you think we should go about like talking about politics? I mean, I know you're really unfiltered.
So unfiltered.
And that's like part of your brand. But let's say you don't have that as like a brand. How would you go about it if you still want to make it known?
I think the best way to talk about it is with the lens of diversity, equity and inclusion, always. And at the moment, that is under a microscope that is being pulled away from a lot of companies. Diversity, equity and inclusion is the best lens you can talk about it. I think maybe even the only time where you can be really safe in that, within that. Any other time, you have to be a bit more radical.
Yeah.
And unapologetic. And
Yeah.
I think that not everyone can be radical and unapologetic,
Yeah.
but you can very much look at policy and you can be critical about it. You can very much look at certain things and have an opinion about it and say, these are my opinions and I understand this and this too, and have a nuanced approach.
Yeah.
And that is the way you talk about it if you're going to. But I also think if you're a bit uncomfortable, don't do it. Just keep away from it.
Yeah.
You know, my favorite thing to say is I don't have the range.
Oh,
So
like
there
it.
are certain topics that I know I have like I said earlier, to hit several racial groups and, you know, but there are things I just don't have the range in talking about. And I'm always really honest with myself. I'm like, I do not have the range on this particular topic. I know about it, but I do not have the range to have this conversation. I do not have the range to have discourse.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing about politics, right? You're going to talk about it. There are going to be people that will challenge you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I really don't like discourse. Like I said what I said. That's how that's how I do things. But not everyone's like that. So be ready to have conversations, be ready to have, you know, see the other side of things and So that's the way I do it. I don't know. How would you suggest people talk about politics? Have you ever talked about politics on there?
Not as like I've posted about it on like LinkedIn per se, but I think it is very known where I stand. Yeah, like just through how I am and how I talk about things and how I talk to other people and like the people I engage with, the people I follow, and stuff like that. So it's. That's another way to do it, right? You don't have to like do the post yourself or like start the conversation, but you can show where you support and stuff. Yeah. However, in conversation like this, I'm very vocal. I'm very like, I will go in and say what I've said, who I talk to, what I've read, who I talk to, what I think about things. And I always lead with empathy. Yeah. Even if I like disagree with someone, I remember I was in an Uber and the driver, he was listening to a podcast that like shifted to Andrew Tate conversation.
Oh, so red pill.
Yes. Or I can't remember. Like, but it was Andrew Tate on there. And I said, oh yeah, you can switch now. Like you can turn it off. And he was like, oh, you don't like Andrew Tate? And I was like, no, like, of course I don't.
1 star for that Uber.
Exactly. And I was like, well, he's not a nice guy. Like generally he does a lot of awful things. And this driver goes, but he's done a lot of good things as well. And I said, well, so did Hitler. And he just went quiet and he was like, yeah, fair enough. And then we had a conversation about it. And he left saying, thank you, that was a good conversation. Like when he dropped me off. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I'm glad I took that because I can't always be bothered. Like I can't always be bothered to like be upset about someone else's like inhuman views or like, you know, supporting people who are have those views. So, but this was an opportunity for me, I felt, to educate, and it went really well. And that like really nice. I try to do that whenever I can.
That's actually such a good point to lead with empathy, because I just like to remind everyone, we all have problematic family members. Every single one of us. One thing I hate is when everyone acts like they come from the perfect family of liberal people. No one does. There will always be someone in your family that's and when we speak to them, we tend to speak to them with more empathy before we cut them off. But before that, we tend to give them empathy. We tend to listen to them and then try and get them to listen to us. Right. And in most cases, we just go, okay, they are not going to change. Their opinions are their opinions, but I've done my part. Yeah. And that is the empathy that you used in that Uber. And I think that having empathy is such such an important part of how to navigate LinkedIn if you are going to talk about politics. Yeah. So true. You're thanks for sharing that. I think that was such because like I said, I'm a bit more, I would have probably just been like, drop me off here. Like I'll walk. Like
that I remember it so well that I felt like, okay, I can take this conversation, nice and it was really good. And similar things, I've noticed people around me who have shifted how they talk about things, because I keep on nagging on about this kind of stuff and like dismissing white supremacy and like awful people, and like and it does reach them. It might take a long time, but it does make a difference, which like I find really cool, you know, like to see more empathy with those who I actively do it with.
No,
you know?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
That empathy is the way forward.
Yeah, definitely. So how do we, this goes back a bit to like the empathy and leading with that, like, but how can we do when someone is reacting really strongly and calling you a snowflake and woke and stuff like that? I guess there's a few ways we could like handle it, and like, and I would say first one is like humor. And be like, yes, I am like woke, and like own it, like we talked about before. What would you say if someone's
okay, so I've actually made several posts on this. I don't even go down the humor route. My first port of call is to protect my peace, and that is using the block button. And I say all the time, I think you've seen, I've made several posts, especially now, saying to all the people that are in minority groups, that button is your best friend. I do not have time to sit there and to debate my humanity. That's how I just see it. I do not. As a Black woman, I just don't have time for it. I just don't. So I will just kindly block. But that is when it's a strong opinion and it's not leading with empathy, and that person isn't wanting to have healthy discourse.
Exactly.
And that's where I use the block button.
Exactly, when you can feel
when I can just feel it. Yeah. But 100%. Other than that, I think then you can go in with humor. Then you can have a conversation and be like, so why do you think that? Tell me more. I just want to understand your perspective. Then there's other ways. But like, I'm just telling you, there are times where I know I'm under attack, and I'm just saying, I like, we already have, like, it even affects your health. So I just will.
It does.
I will just, no, I'm just not doing it. I'm not doing this week.
And I would also say, as someone who is not Black, and like come in and like help out, right? Like to be like you, like me, just like back and be like, oh yeah, fully agree. Like you don't even have to get into the discussion, but just like show that you're like that. To support.
I think there's so much, and you like, this is social media we're talking about. You can support someone by celebrate reaction.
Exactly.
Like, you know, that is support in itself. Love. Care.
Yeah.
Those are all the reactions.
We have all those lovely ones.
All those lovely reactions. Use them, especially, I think, especially when people are putting their necks out on the line and saying things about racism, saying things about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The least you could do is just show them a bit of support through that. Because maybe you don't want to talk about it, but there are people out there doing that work for you. And, you know, back in 2020, we had all these activists doing this amazing work. And that's where I was like, I don't have the range. So I let them have the mic, and I was like, oh, they're speaking. Let me like, share. You know, I'll just be like, oh my God, have you seen that? Like that's how I would make sure that went around, and I was supporting them, because a lot of work goes into that. A lot of it goes into it. And I think you saw recently when I called out what was meant to be apparently a Roman salute, people debating that, and I was like, nope, this is a Nazi salute, and it's probably one of the,
which got flagged, right, on LinkedIn.
The word Nazi gets flagged on LinkedIn. It's actually, so I think I saw it yesterday, someone posted it again, and they've kind of stopped flagging it as much, but it was being flagged at the time, which I can understand from their community guidelines why they would,
and also I understand it for how it was before, because they want to stop those who support it, right?
Like, that's
exactly.
Why so that's why those guidelines are there. But then, why it's very unlikely that there would be people on the platform to like spread.
Well, unless this keeps going, because then people will.
But now people are emboldened to come out and do that. And I called out the fact that there were body language coaches on LinkedIn gaslighting people. I'm just going to say it. They were gaslighting people, telling them that it could have been something else, and they might be misinterpreting. And people
don't
who
see what you see.
Are brown-nosing Elon, being like, oh, and it was a lot. So I called it out, and people really engaged with that post. I had someone send me a DM, which was really, and I actually think I should read it
if you feel
on the podcast. I probably won't name them. Let me just grab my phone.
Do so.
And I think that I should on the podcast. Because this is what happens when you speak out about political things. Give me a second.
I can also mention how like you mentioned back in 2020 when everyone read all those books, like I
Yeah.
was one of those people. I have
amazing.
them still.
Thank you for still having them, because I've been seeing people selling their
Yeah.
books from 2020 on Vinted, and I'm like, okay, so you've done the work now and you're completely done. You can't just
exactly.
give these away to someone that might need them.
Yeah, exactly. Like paid forward. But
yeah.
I wrote about why I no longer talk to white people about
I
race.
love that. Yeah, by Rennie.
One of the best
Lodge.
books.
Yeah, that's I met Rennie. It's one of the best books. Yes, it is one of the best books. Yeah.
It was incredible, and the amounts of tabs I have on that book. And I remember writing the review for it, and I was like, "This is the most important book I've read in 2020."
Yeah.
And yeah, it really. I mean, I was this way before that as well.
Yeah, you
but
are. I've
it
known
has
you for years.
given me more tools on how to do it.
Yeah.
That book. So
that's
book
why-
recommendation.
Definitely a book recommendation.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good one.
Yeah.
To
If you
recommend.
want to talk about politics and like racism and stuff on LinkedIn, that's a good book to refer
Good book to pick up.
Yeah.
So we were just speaking about how I called out Nazis
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, and someone sent me this DM, and I'm just going to read it out.
Amazing.
Hi, Aziza. Thank you for calling out the Nazi salute. To not make excuses for that awful gesture, and to have the courage to just speak out so we don't normalize this racist behavior that's very harmful. My husband's great-grandparents were killed by the Nazis in Poland. They shot them in front of their own children. His grandmother and great-aunt became orphans and were raised by local nuns. What those soldiers did was pure evil, and it caused generational harm. The actions of the past and present need to be called out, and we all have a part to play in that. My heart feels warmth that there are so many doing the right thing that you did as well, and it gives me hope for a brighter future.
Same.
And I got this, like, I think it was like on a Saturday or something. No, it was a Friday night. And I think I was out somewhere and I couldn't respond straight away, but it literally warmed my heart.
It's
and I
warming
said,
mine now.
that's why I'm happy to be woke and to be a snowflake.
Exactly.
And put my neck out on the line.
Yeah.
And for someone to take the time out of the day to write me that message, I can't thank them enough.
Yeah.
I am so more people need to do this.
Yeah.
And not because this is the response you're going to get, because it's what's fucking right.
Exactly. And I also love that they refer to it being like, I see more people doing this, and we are a fucking boulder, a snow boulder. And it's like there is so much good. And the more of us speak about it on LinkedIn or elsewhere, it's going to help, right?
Yeah. And I feel like one of the things that came out of that was, like I said, yesterday, someone wrote the same person that got flagged for writing Nazi didn't get flagged for it yesterday. It could be that they've looked at that policy and they've gone, okay, well, if people are talking, we just need a better moderation system.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
So we can enforce small changes through the things that we say and the things that we do. And I just think that, that's what's really worth it in the end. So bottom line is speak about it.
Yeah.
Like I
it's
said,
okay on
it's
LinkedIn
okay on
and
LinkedIn,
elsewhere.
and there are much less impressionable people on there.
Yeah.
And that's why I'd say it's that also gives you, the push to go and do that, because there are hardly any, not saying there are hardly any children on there, but it's not a place where, like TikTok, for example, and TikTok is one place where people really lean into politics, but I can
because they're younger,
but I can also see why people would be like, oh, maybe we should be more careful on here because, there are more impressionable people on there. But so I definitely think that people should do that because there are several good reasons behind talking about politics.
Definitely.
Platform.
Yeah. And with that, we will finish
Yeah.
this episode. Thank you for sharing your experiences and for speaking about it and for doing that post and getting that lovely response.
Yeah.
It's been, I'm glad we pushed this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Really happy.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Ew.